Now, we are picking up on today at Philippians 2:25, I believe, is where we got to, didn't we? But let me just give us kind of a catch-up a little bit so we can take off with 25. It says in 22 through 24, Paul was reminding the Philippians of Timothy's trustworthiness. He's going to send Timothy to help the Philippian church, and he said, I would say that Timothy's so trustworthy it would be even as I myself was there with you. So that's what he's building Timothy up, because he said Timothy's like-minded as Paul was for the Philippians. So he's sending Timothy to minister to him, but he himself is detained in prison and can't go at this time. But Paul himself would have a desire to be with them. So we'll find out that later that'll happen. But we're glad that we have and see a person like Paul the Apostle that was so against the church that God brought back into the understanding of who is in control and who Jesus is on the road to Damascus. And Paul made a 180 turn completely. Even the Jews beat him because he was such a Jewish religious person that he persecuted the church. And now he's such a Christian, committed Christian, that he'd take the whippings and the beatings without any back talk at all. And so now he's in prison, and he's got Timothy, a young man he's ministering to. But he picks up in verse 25 when it says, Yet I suppose it necessary to send unto Epaphroditus, my brother and companion in labor and fellow soldier, but your messenger and he that ministers to my wants. Paul uses the word, King James uses the word, our wants. I don't know if Paul used that or not, but it's needs. The biggest thing is the needs that we have, that Epaphroditus. Paul felt deserted, so to speak, there in the prison, and he had just few people with him. Epaphroditus was a member at the Philippian church, and he had brought gifts. I guess you could say it was writing material for him to write with while he was in there, but he brought stuff to Paul while he was in prison from Philippi, the church at Philippi. Epaphroditus did. Well, while Epaphroditus was there, he got sick too. And Epaphroditus, Paul called him my brother in the Lord, of course, and he said, and companion in labor. So Epaphroditus is a servant of the Lord, working through the church at Philippi. And he's there with Paul at the prison, ministering to him. And Paul said to his wants or his needs, and verse 26 talks about Epaphroditus. He said that Epaphroditus longed after you all and was full of heaviness. He was troubled, sorely troubled, because that he had heard, that ye had heard that he had been sick. Communication was a difficult thing at that time. This letter that they received is hand-carried from one place to another one. They had, of course, they didn't have no communications where they could talk. They heard by the way of different people that Epaphroditus was sick. And so he wanted to reassert to them that he wasn't sick unto death, but he was pretty sick, so to speak, in a way of trying to minister. But Paul said he was very sick, and how God had delivered him, showing mercy to him, that is Paul, and his needs there. So when I think about stuff like this, I think about the prayer chain that we've got. See, it's amazing how many people gets connected on that when you put it out about the needs of things going on and how we can work together. It would have been good if they could have had some kind of prayer chain like that, wouldn't it? But they couldn't. They didn't have no communication like we've got. So we need to thank God for the communication we got there. In verses 26 and 27, Paul praises God for the mercy to both to both of them. And that's how we all should be toward one another in sickness and other problems that we encounter. So we see Timothy and Epaphroditus have the same attitude of service and sacrifice, giving themselves for others. I want to say this. We feel more accomplished when we relieve someone else's burden, don't we? It's not necessarily because you had to substitute yourself like Jesus did in our place, but what you did was you used what God blessed you with, whether it's time or resources or compassion, to help somebody else lift a heavy burden off of them. And it gives us a sense of fulfillment more than money or houses or lands or stuff. It makes us feel better toward ourselves, and that's because of the Spirit that lives in us that gives us that extra unction, because we have done something like Jesus said, put ourselves aside that someone else could be the better. Timothy and Epaphroditus are two of those people working with Paul, and he's brought that to their attention and brought it to our attention. And now we should be concerned when we hear about others being in a situation that seems so dire. Tonight we discussed about the people in Texas being so dire. This won't be the lifetime you think about it, and it won't be the lifetime you pray about it just tonight, because you want to realize how limited we are, but how unlimited God is, and how much people are rushing to help. Well, they interviewed somebody, and he said, well, we got a lot of help in here coming in. Well, that's what I'm talking about, that essence. If some can pray, some can send resources, and some can help. But it all works together. Now, Paul was talking here out of a prison, which he was restricted. He couldn't go. But he had two, Timothy and Epaphroditus, that can go. Then they can do that. And so he was encouraging them. Now, it says in verse 27, for indeed Epaphroditus was sick nigh unto death. But God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. Now, what was Paul saying? He said, so to speak, in our English, we'd say, I don't know what happened to me if something happened to Epaphroditus. He was there helping him and through this and encouraging him while he was in prison. He was even taking the letters out for him. He was helping him with the stuff to write with while he was in there. He's so limited. But see, he said, then he becomes sick. Now, we have that problem, and it's still going on today. We have people that I call encouragers in our church, people that are encouragers in our family. And then when they get sick and go down, it seems like, oh man, there's a lot of things going on, you know. Epaphroditus was one of them. It went down sick. It limited Paul. It limited the Philippians. And they were very concerned about what was going on with him. But he said God showed mercy on Epaphroditus, and not on him only, but also on Paul, myself. I had enough sorrow going on being limited here and concerned about you that I didn't want to lose Epaphroditus. Now, when I say lose him, he didn't want Epaphroditus to be taken out of the picture. God could move him at any time he wanted to because he was a faithful servant. But Paul said, oh, I don't want to lose Epaphroditus. He's one that's keeping things connected between me and the outside world. So our prayer through the fellowship keeps us connected to the hurting around us. So this is the same kind of a message that we're saying here. So Paul said that there's a cause to rejoice with one another in gladness for such a one as the reputation. Look at what it says in verse 28. He said, I sent him therefore the more carefully, talking about Epaphroditus, that when ye see him again, you may rejoice, and that I may be the less sorrowful. He said how good it would be to know that when Epaphroditus gets back to you, he can update you on all that's going on and what's been happening. And also that he'll be back with you, delivered out of this sickness and out of this place where he's having to stay. No doubt the place where he's having to stay there was hard too. Epaphroditus didn't have no motel later or nothing he was staying in while he was there. So he was good to have him to go back home or back with his fellow workers there. And he said, that's why I say that his reputation shines as service and sacrifice toward Paul and his church as well. So Epaphroditus was a man that we hear a little about, but he's really a key player in this church at Philippi. And he's a key minister in one of God's man that's limited. Now, we have things going on today where people spend a lot of their life ministering, and then they get to the place where they can't operate. Then that's the time when we can go. They're not in a prison, but they're confined to where they can't go out no more. Huh? They can't do. I'll show you something in my life. I talk about my life because I know that. I'm not talking about something I hear or something I've seen or something that I think, but something that's happened. I've got good friends that always gave of me of their agricultural things when they had plenty. Well, now, these two friends of mine I'm speaking of, I'll not name them tonight, but they're limited now. And they can't do like they did times past. So when I've got corn, they've got corn. When I've got beans, they got beans. And you know, it's just that time. It's the time when you move in that direction. It's when you see that. Now, you say that's not very important, a few ears of corn or a little bean. No, it's not. But it's the thought that goes with it. They could probably buy some corn or buy some beans, but it's the thought of interacting with each other and just the small things. Enough of these small things will make something big, right? So when I'm saying I know that, it gives you a sense of just saying, and listening to them say, oh, that was good, no, that was good. But when you do these things spiritually and when you be a friend, how do you know a friend is a real friend? All right? The scripture says a real friend loves at all times. It's not circumstantial friendships. Jesus Christ set the example as a real friend. We don't have to do good to make him love us. But when we do good and do as he says, it makes him look good and it makes us feel good. So that's what I'm saying. Paul's saying it here to him when he's talking about it. He said, would we all as individuals have such dedication and service to the Lord, both in the church and outside, to our brethren and the lost? That's where the light shines, is when you don't deviate between the needs in people's life. All you do is deviate between joining them in what they're doing, okay? You wouldn't want to participate in what they're doing. Paul admonished these, and so that believing church who could not go, you could say, well, I couldn't go to a prison. I wouldn't feel safe in there. I couldn't do that. We got people that can and don't feel intimidated. So what are we to do? We're to pray for them and help them financially as they minister to prisoners. Does prisoners need ministering to? Sure they do. All right? How about a far country? can you just pack your clothes and catch a plane and go into a far country? You say, I don't know about that. I'm not good in a different country. I said, well, you can go if you know somebody that is faithful that's going, and you can help support them in prayer and maybe financially. That's what Epaphroditus was doing to Paul. That's what we can do. And that's why we call the Southern Baptist calls a cooperative program. See? There's some go and some stay. The ones that go need some help in prayer and some financial help. So that's what Paul was telling us as Christians, and that's what we need to do. So he was admonishing us. As the rest supports in prayers and gifts, so did Epaphroditus. It's still the same today. It's God's great commission is what it is. And I've got to the age myself that I don't know if I can go to Africa and be a success. Only God could tell me that and let me understand that. But I have been in times past, and I didn't think about it. I didn't think about my restriction. I thought about now, I'm not gonna fit in good, so I'm gonna have to work with this, and that's what it is. But now I got people that I know there that I've met that I've got confidence in. Nathan, when he comes here, I give Nathan anything that come out of my resources, and I trust him with it, and I know he'll use it to the well-being of the people and God. I don't have any idea. If I had to divide what I had to live and what I think he needed to live, I could give him half of it, because I know enough about him. And so that's why I'm saying to us, we have to have enough discernment and communication to know how to minister, and not, we can let the enemy drain us if we're not careful, but not having discernment of who we're going to put this in and how we're going to do this. So you can't just give to be given, because that's not what it's about. And this is what this is about today. When he closed the chapter out, he said, he's talking about Epaphroditus there, he said in 29, receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness, and hold such in reputation. Now Paul done spoke highly about him. Because for the work of Christ, Epaphroditus was nigh unto death, not regarding his life to supply the lack of service toward me. Wow. Sometimes we wonder, don't we, as Christians, well, am I really making a difference in what I do? Am I really making a difference in what God has given me and what I have access to? The Scripture says that we need to give liberally and without favoritism. But he said, be a discerner of the intent of the heart as we give and as we go, as we invest time. Time is the most precious commodity we've got. And when we invest it, we need to invest it wisely in what we do with our day and what we do with our weeks and years of our life. Nothing's more important to begin a day than time with God in prayer and study of His Word. You say, well, I get up early and leave. Well, you can go to bed with it. Nothing's greater to go to bed with it than when you get up early and leave. And during the day, you need to stop, regardless of where you're at, and take some time for it and talk to it. What I'm saying is Paul was talking about the importance of these two men, Timothy and Epaphroditus. Now, he had a lot of men worked around him. Old Luke worked with him a while. Gaius worked with him a while. I can name them that worked with him. And but he singled these two out to the church at Philippi. And he said, these two men you can trust, just like myself. And he said, Epaphroditus is a jewel in your church. So he sacrificed his time and his own health is being in threat. So chapter 2 is summed up there, and I don't know if we need to get into chapter 3 or not, but let me just stop and say we've covered chapter 1 and chapter 2, and I know you've probably read it again. I know I do. I go back and read it again and read it again and read it again, and make sure that we get the Spirit's interpretation out of that to us so that we can see how it fits us. It's not about the church at Philippi only. It's about the churches that God ordained to do the work of the ministry, and about the people of God that's involved in it. That's what it's about, just like us. So how about chapter 1 and 2, or chapter 2, we just finished it. Are there any questions maybe that you've read over, or something that you'd like to bring to light before we move on?
You said something a minute ago that I was thinking that Epaphroditus stayed with Paul, because he's on house arrest,
Mm-hmm.
because he was sitting there to serve Paul, but Paul ended up serving him because he was so sick, But you said something a while ago about him not having hotel.
Right here, what he said in verses 27 and 28 together, you'll notice when he stopped in 27, he was talking about Epaphroditus. He said that God had mercy on him. That was Epaphroditus. And not on him only, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. And he said, next verse, I sent him therefore the more carefully, that when you see him again. Now he sent Epaphroditus back to him.
Right, when he got better.
Mm-hmm. He sent him back to him.
Right.
Probably with some of that writing that he's doing. Some of this letter right here, I would imagine. I don't know. It don't verify that out. But he said that he's sending him back to him in the same talk there. That when you see him again, see, now they ain't seen Timothy yet, but when they see Epaphroditus again, so he's going to the church, you may rejoice, and that I may be the less sorrowful. He didn't want to detain Epaphroditus anymore from doing the ministry there and leaving the church. But Paul used, in 29, Paul used the words there. It said, and hold such in reputation. Now, what are you talking about? He's talking about such people as Epaphroditus in reputation. Hold them up. They're to be honored before God for their faithful service. And so that's what he's talking to the church at Philippi. Now, he's writing and talking to the church at Philippi about the work that Epaphroditus has done. He's no stranger to the church, but they don't understand all that he does. Let me ask you a question. And I'm not trying to single myself out, but I'm going to do it because it'll be personal. Do y'all know all that I do as your pastor?
All that you do.
Mm-hmm. To other people as a pastor. Well, see, Paul said that. See, they don't know all that Epaphroditus does. And he said, I'm going to send him to you. And you need to rejoice for such a one as this. Because he is who you need to listen to in your church. He's got a servant spirit, and he won't quit. And he's leaving him out here. So what I'm saying is, they don't know him, even though they know Epaphroditus, they don't know all he is doing for the kingdom's sake. And Paul's building him up when he sent him back to him. He said, I don't know. Y'all may look at him like, this is old Epaphroditus that we grew up with. He said, no. This is Epaphroditus, and the work as God is doing in his life, you need to do something. You need to listen to him. That's what Paul was saying here. So That's what we need to do, is see, as your pastor, I don't burden y'all with everything that goes on in the ministry, right? Because there's different things in different families and different ways and different people. But the thing about it is, I do it because I care. I do it because God loves people. And I take the responsibility as the pastor, where somebody says, I don't know what that pastor's doing, or others will say, now he's really doing something. It doesn't make any difference. Epaphroditus was the same way. Some people says, was he talking about Epaphroditus that we know? Paul said, not talking about the Epaphroditus you were thinking about. I'm talking about the Epaphroditus God is working with. And that's where we're at today. We need to think about and see what's going on. Our life will make a difference when we do what God asks us to do and not take any regard to the hurt that we go through. If somebody says, I don't believe you're saved, does that make you not saved? Say, I don't believe you're telling the truth. Does that make you a liar? But you can take it to the offense. And I said, well, I tell you what we'll have to do, I guess. We'll just have to let God prove which one is. He'll do that for us. And he will. When you get into that confrontation, you turn it over to him and watch him. He'll show somebody, one or the other. And you say, well, you're just pretty sure of that. I know that. I know that. He wants to let us know something, that what we do with him is more important and how we serve him than what anybody else thinks. So when Paul was telling them, say, I'm going to send Epaphroditus to you now, and he's a different man than when you sent him up here. God done a work in his life, and he's done a work in my life. I tell you, he's some kind of... And no doubt, when they sent him to him, they didn't think nothing bad. They sent him with a gift to Paul while he was in prison. But anyway, I tried to answer your question some. We don't know what each one of us is doing in the kingdom. And sometimes you'll say, I think we ought to do this, or I think we ought to do that. And I ask the question, I said, what are you doing in the kingdom? We're not to brag about anything we're doing, but thank God we're not a people without hope. And it don't make no difference what a lot of other people say. It's what God knows is going on, and he's going to prove. Paul said he's going to prove. I'm going to let you watch him when he comes back and see if you want to agree with me. God has done a work in his life.
Who's that last sentence mean? To supply what was lacking in your service, to understand that, toward me.
Which one now?
The last sentence in the service.
Oh, because of the work of Christ, he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life, to supply your lack of service toward me. Now, I'm not sure of what Paul was talking about in that incident, but what I am saying is to him, you might not have been able to come, but Epaphroditus came for you. That's what he's saying. And that's what he's meaning right there, I'm pretty sure. He said, you might not have been able to come, but Epaphroditus came for you. And he's had a tough time. But God's delivered him. And I'm going to send him back to you. And when you get him back there, you're going to say, he come back a different man than what he left. Paul said, now I'm going to tell you something. When you serve the Lord to the extent Epaphroditus did, when you go back, people's going to say, God's done a different work in you, ain't he? And that's what Paul said. His reputation has changed because of what God is doing in his life. And he said, now you couldn't have come, but you sent Epaphroditus, and he came for you. And that's the way it is with us. We can't necessarily go every time or sometime, but we can help support people that can go. And so Paul said, toward their lack of want, to supply your lack of service toward me. They wanted to do something for Paul, but they didn't know how to do it or who would go. So Epaphroditus said, I'll go. So the lack of what they could have done, Epaphroditus done for them.
But didn't Epaphroditus, like they sent him to serve Paul, and he worked himself, and he got very sick, and then Paul ministered to Epaphroditus.
With prayer. I don't know what Paul could do in prison, but he did pray for him. And God delivered him because of Paul's prayer, no doubt. But what I'm saying is, when Epaphroditus went there, he didn't go to minister to Paul. He went there to help, to help Paul in his dilemma. In other words, he could help him to encourage him that Philippian church is thinking about you. You're not alone, even though you're restricted here. But in the meantime, the conditions in where they were, it's 1,000 wonders Paul wasn't sick too in the conditions he was in. But Epaphroditus left, what we're going to say, decent conditions, and came into a slum conditions in that prison, and he got sick. I'm going to tell you this. I can take one of you and take you into some of these prisons and let you stay about a week, and you'll come out sick. And something else too. But see, that's what he was. He was in a subpar. Paul was not in a jail cell like in Coleman, Alabama. He was.
When they had the earthquake.
Yeah, he was in a dungeon, cold and wet, and had a cave maybe with a jail or bars or something on it, and it was bad. And then Epaphroditus was sleeping on the ground probably. They were ministering to him. He didn't have nowhere to stay, and he got sick. What I'm saying is we've got to look at where he's at and listen to what he's doing. Sometimes you ever lay down in your bed at night and say, Lord, I thank you for this soft bed. I do pretty regular. Because I've laid down a lot of nights and it's wet and cold and couldn't sleep, tired. And I can lay down in that bed now and I say, God, thank you for this good bed. It's so good, it's so soft, and it's so comfortable. Nights after nights I've slept wet and cold and it, dangerous, and I can imagine looking at where they're at and how Epaphroditus got sick. I didn't even know what kind of food they had. Could you imagine that? A prisoner's food.
Many times the prisoners, friends, and family had to provide food, clothing, water, or they didn't get anything.
That's what we say, but Paul said he came and supplied your lack of want for me, and that's what he was doing. He was taking care of both of them. He got sick unto death, and Paul said, I prayed God would have mercy on us and not add sorrow on my sorrow. He didn't have too many people ministering to him to start with, and Epaphroditus was faithful, and now he was sick unto death. But the conditions he was in would make anybody sick. And I'm not sure Paul wasn't sick. He didn't say he was sick, but Epaphroditus was very bad sick. That Paul thought he was going to die. But God delivered him. So, and we've even been in that place ourselves, haven't you? And people says, I don't know how they live through that. And I said, God wanted them to live through it. That's how they lived through it. And that's how Epaphroditus lived through it. But the conditions was terrible. And we got to, in our mind, vision where they is at and what kind of conditions they is in. And
In my mind, I'm trying to think house arrest versus being in prison.
wow, in prisons back in was something else. They didn't have indoor plumbing. or indoor water either. Could you imagine that? You reckon they let him out of cell to use the bathroom? I don't think so. See, we got it in our mind that we can see this, but it's terrible now where they're at. And that's why he got sick, and that's why they both in the condition they're in. But anyway, I just want to get y'all, we'll not get into 3 because we'll jump into that next week. I'll let Chris is going to help us next week. He's going to be in 3 with you, so y'all be ready for him. Read up 3 and load up on him. Y'all be ready for him.